What's a good word, y'all? It's your boy DKB here. So I went deep in my research bag, went and found the best value option we can add as a free agent for this New York Jets team in the midst of this Achilles injury that took Elijah Vera Tucker out for the season. Now, for what it's worth, I already mentioned, I think we should give Max Mitchell a legitimate shot to go out there and try to become the right tackle for the remainder of the season, especially depending whatever shakeups will come after the Dwayne Brown injury, which he looks like a better option as a backup tackle, even though that's a lot of money to have on the bench. This should be a meritocracy where performance drives all results on the field. So nonetheless, knowing that Max Mitchell should be the right tackle, knowing that we have some other in-house options and some other decent external options as well. We still do have Billy Turner, not loving the idea, but we do have Cedric Ogilvie that's been kind of on the practice squad, off the practice squad. We've seen him jump in last year. He didn't look like a complete liability. So, there's that. That's kind of the floor that we're looking at for right now when it comes to the offensive line. Just don't be a liability. We already have one of those in Laken Tomlinson, who's actually had some strong bounce back games, but we've still seen a lot of performances that have been terrible. But nonetheless, let's dive into the tackle, Joe Haeg. Now, this is a name that I doubt anybody else is really going to throw out there again. Deep in my research bag with this one, but I do think there's some strong upside with a guy like this when it comes to knowing what you're going to get as a player. For what it's worth, up front and center, this isn't a guy that really fits what you want to do from a schematic standpoint to the T. It's not the most athletic guy, but he does bring a lot of qualities in terms of consistent performances and knowing what you're going to get out of a guy like him that I think would be well received and well appreciated in this New York Jets offensive line room. So let's dive into some of the recent going-ons with Joe Haeg. He's coming off a 3-year, $7.5 million contract. Only $1 million of that was guaranteed to play with the Browns. Ultimately, didn't really get a lot of run. He was a guy that was kind of a bit more of a hyped signing, coming off a successful 1-2 year stint with the Steelers, and then the Browns just really didn't ultimately do anything with him. He kind of got to ride the bench and get a free payday out of them, but he's a 40-game starter over the course of his career so far, playing about 6 years in the league. Played 80 games overall, although he hasn't been a consistent starter since 2018, back when he was with the Colts. But he's had a 59.5 average grade as a tackle in PFF. It's not the worst thing in the world. I took a look at kind of how things have broken down for him over the last couple years. His best year by far was back in 2019. He had a 71.9 grade, although essentially he essentially played the equivalent of like a game and a quarter's worth of snaps. I think he had like 79 on record, something like that. But, for the most part, he's kind of a low, or I should say a high 60s kind of guy for those that care about the grading there. But again, he's a guy that on film, consistently what you're getting out of him. And again, I would preface this by being you want to find a guy, I should say, that's not going to be a liability and can actually try to contribute some way here. This is what I think Joe Haeg can do. So what would he bring to the Jets? Versatility, and I know that word gets thrown out quite a bit, but this is the closest guy to an Elijah Vera Tucker in terms of churning out consistent performances at multiple positions that you'll find. He's played everything but center over the course of his career, and so not only does this help you out at right tackle, but if you do need to do an offensive line shakeup and he still ends up looking like one of your early best offensive linemen, you can go ahead and put him in wherever you best see fit. So I think that would be a huge boost to this New York Jets team, where constantly seems like we're shaking things up every couple weeks as an injury occurs, or some consistent underwhelming performances. good size and length for the position, so he's a guy that you're not going to have to worry about from a physical standpoint, being outmatched with too many opponents. Moves people as a run blocker. That's definitely going to be his best trait, considering Breece Hall is going to be the engine to this offense. I would expect that anybody they bring in would have to be have an advantage of some sort in the running game in order to make it make a ton of sense. Can keep his block sustained, does a generally pretty good job with keeping his feet moving, and he can change position without the mental lapses. To really go back to that, that was something that got touched on when we seen it happening with Elijah Vera Tucker. We had a lot of Hall of Fame legends and stuff that were speaking about how crazy it is that he's putting up those kind of performances, and things are backwards in terms of how you're expecting a block of play, having your dominant side versus your non-dominant side being used and all of those different things. So again, Joe Haeg, ABT on two completely different levels, but you do get the versatility out of them. Again, you're getting those consistent performances, and you don't really see a drop off from one position to the next in terms of what he can bring there. There are going to be some things we're worried about, right? He can be susceptible to speed rushers. He can lose the edge pretty quick. Again, doesn't have great bend, doesn't have great recovery ability, different things like that. So if he gets beat clean on a play, he's essentially going to get beat clean. Stunts and twists are something he's going to need to work on. Taking a look at what I saw from the Steelers, for example, the 3 sacks that he gave up during that season, 2 of them were based on him getting lost on some of those stunts and twists. Hopefully you having a guy like Joe Tippmann next to you that's also a great communicator can kind of help offset some of those deficiencies in his game. And then he needs to improve working in space. This is going to be the biggest factor, right? As a West Coast scheme, the athleticism will probably show up here, and from what I saw, he kind of gets lost at the second level occasionally, and then of course in the screen game, that hasn't been something that's been overly effective for him. But one of the final things I would say to kind of push it over the edge for anybody that would think about it, should be able to get him on a very cheap contract. He's one of the more rarely penalized offensive lineman members that you'll find for a guy that generally tends to bring some solid physicality to the position. And then even thinking back to when he got drafted back in 2016, I believe it was for him. I remember Matt Miller saying this was a guy, again, he was drafted late day 2, who could start for 8 years or so in the league. So definitely has the pedigree and kind of the ability to go out there and get it done. But and outside the box thinking, I would still love to go out there and get a La'el Collins. I'm still pretty high on revisiting the DJ Fluker conversation as well. But Joe Haeg would actually be a serious contender as number 3 for me if you want to go best value approach, and adding a player that can actually still improve your locker room and your offensive line going forward. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are, and I'll catch you again. Peace.